Welcome to the Divorce Diaries podcast. One man's anonymous and live account of if he should get a divorce or stay married. He's been cheated on, and he's cheated. Protecting the innocent with changed voice patterns, the omission of names, ages, and genders. His authentic journey and account of the daily events of his marriage are helping him sort out his feelings and not get lost in the ups or the downs. New episodes are released daily. Welcome to the Divorce Diaries podcast. Entire seasons are released on Patreon weeks before anywhere else at Divorce Diaries Podcast Patreon page. Link in description. Now for today's episode.
Unraveling the past will always rear its ugly head again and again. Just when you think you're past it, just when you think you've forgotten about it and you won't have to deal with it again, you will. My youngest child that lives with me now, she no longer lives with her mom, as I've recorded in the past. She lives with her daddy, and her daddy is one that continues to hold her accountable. She's a very proud child. Sometimes a lot of children are, and I do think that it's a great quality. It's a delicate wave, though, that you must surf, just as a surfer would do. They wait for the white wave, and they look really far in the distance, and they think that's a good swell that's coming. For any surfers out there, just know that I'm not a surfer, so if I'm going to screw up my analogies and the words I used as far as swell, surf, break, boogie, whatever, I'm not a surfer. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I could say fruit fly, and that could mean surfboard for all I care. But a surfer's very patient, and as a parent, you sort of have to be like that. This morning, I caught a very big wave, one that I haven't surfed before. I haven't caught that wave. I caught a wave of pride, and she's been on this wave of pride for the past 2 days. So she's going to get a snake soon. We don't have the time to take care of a dog. I don't want that responsibility. My daughter's already responsibility enough, and taking on a puppy is going to make us slave to our house, and the need to take the dog out and the eating every day schedule. A puppy needs a lot of attention, and that's what we would get, and that's what I don't want to have in my life right now. So we're going to get a snake. She's been researching snake videos for quite some time, and there was a spot in her room where we needed to create a place for the snake to live. So I needed to buy this sort of console table sort of thing. It's got 3 shelves, and we're going to sit the tank on top of that. And so it can be decorative, it can look nice, and it can match with her room. So there are these outlets, and she's going to have to plug the heating pad for the snake in there, and possibly a light. And there's some USB cables on this outlet where you could charge your phone, an iPad, or device, or anything like that takes a USB. So she's unplugging the things from there, and she's saying, I'm not going to plug things in here. And I'm like, oh, why is that? She says, because I want to save energy. Okay, cool. But you plugging in a USB cable into the wall, you're not wasting energy, because the energy doesn't have anywhere to go. It's got to be connected to a phone, an iPad, a computer, or something like that, where the energy can actually go and flow into this device. And she's very young. She didn't really understand the concept of electricity, but she said, I'm not doing that, in an upset way, as if I was trying to make her do something she didn't want to do. Mind you, she's got 2 lamps plugged up in this room. The lamps have USB cables, and she's got her Apple Watch charger plugged in there, and that charger stays plugged into that USB port all the time. And I said, why don't you want to plug it in? I want to save energy. Oh, okay. That's admirable. That's good. And I'm glad. But plugging things in that aren't going into anything, that's not gonna waste energy. Well, I'm not plugging it in. I said, okay, well, do you want to look over at those lamps you have plugged in and take a look at the USB thing that you've got plugged into the lamp? You're leaving things plugged in over there. but you're not plugging them in over here. She got very defensive, very proud. But I left it. That was the day before yesterday. And yesterday, she's like, I went on a field trip, and they said that if you leave things plugged in, they waste electricity. And I said, okay. The chances are she had a very overzealous, broad brush painting tour guide or museum teacher or something that did what they did when I was young too. They scared me. Don't run any water at all, because water is a perishable resource and it cannot be renewed. Don't turn on any lights and leave them on unless you absolutely need them. Unplug everything all over your house and don't leave anything plugged in. So first, I finally this morning kind of verbally and emotionally contended with her until she submitted. And I'm like, look, I just want to explain how electricity works, how current flows, how it stops and stays, and how there are many things in place, most of the time switches, that allow the electricity to flow to the next circuit. So I'm trying to do it in a very rudimentary way where a very young child can understand that just because something's plugged in, it doesn't mean it's using electricity, because there's that word use. There's nothing there to use it. So if it's just plugged in, it's not being used. And that's why when you slice a cable mid-current, you may get electrocuted. There may be sparks that come out, or the current will try to arc and touch itself again, because electricity must continue to flow in succession. There must be a current. It must go in concurrence, current. So after I finally was able to do that, I told her that, wow, I haven't seen this pride in you for such a long time. And I remembered contending with my soon-to-be ex-wife when she would just dig her heels in on a particular issue and not relent despite any logical argument one could make. My other children, the same way. And it threw me back to that time when we were married and living in a marital home, and all of those conflicts that I felt were unnecessary, dark, and a waste of time, because there were other things we could have been doing, other things we could have discussed or talked about. But just because you wanted to do something and you were going to do it, even though it would inconvenience everything and everyone, I told my daughter, I said, well, I just want you to be consistent, my dear. If you want to unplug this that's not using any current, I need you to be intellectually consistent and go and unplug your lamps and unplug your HomePod in your room, because those things are using electricity too by your standard. And she's like, well, no, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave those plugged in, but I'm just going to unplug my computer charger and unplug the USB cables from the wall. I'm like, nope, that doesn't work for me. And because I decided I was going to die on that hill. You can see the type of stubbornness that I also have as well. My stubbornness typically is rooted in logic. It can be rooted in emotion, and those are no roots to be had. So it can be free-flowing, and I can be batshit crazy sometimes myself. But when I'm rooted in logic, I'll stay there. And that's what happened this morning. I told my daughter, I said, look, I don't think that you really understand how electricity works, and I would want to explain it to you like I tried to do yesterday. But you cut me off, and you didn't want me to explain it because I think you thought you had your mind made up, and maybe you think you understand something fully. And that's when she told me, well, when I went on that field trip, that's what they told me. And I said, I understand. Well, here's what can't happen. Just because someone told you something doesn't mean you get to disrespect your father, and he doesn't get to speak to you. It doesn't mean you get to shut down conversations. It doesn't mean things now are going to go your entire way. I told my daughter also that we live in this home together. I'm not going to necessarily be uncomfortable, or you're just going to change based on how you feel. You could feel like we may need to unplug the television and unplug the refrigerator and unplug all of these things. And because you want to save energy, and all of a sudden, You can't live or exist with the microwave plugged in. We're not going to do that. I would like to explain to you how electricity works so that we can figure out the best way to move forward. Because I want to talk to you about certain things that need to take energy. As the temperatures increase where we live, I also talked to her about, hey, if we really want to go to that extreme, one, we wouldn't be living in this apartment where we live. We wouldn't take advantage of that thing that people invented to make themselves comfortable inside, which would be air conditioning. We would just open the windows and doors and do our best to fan ourselves with our hands. We wouldn't even buy a fan to plug up and blow on us. That's not what we would do. We would just go and find shade and just sit there and hope that shade or being by a river would help keep us cool during the entire day. But we're humans, and energy is made to be used and consumed. Never mind the fact that you're about to get on a school bus and go to school. And that school bus is going to use gasoline. There are lots of blinking lights. Helps keep you guys safe when you guys stop at a bus stop. It's a massive piece of machinery that needs to be controlled by a couple of pedals. By a woman that is a paltry 5'2". So yes, we need technology to help us do things and make things more comfortable. We need technology to help us do that. So our refrigerator's plugged in right now. Why is that? She said, well, it's to keep the food cold. Yes, that is a function that it must perform all the time, or else our food will spoil and we'll have to only buy what we can consume within a day. Technology is there to help us. I need you to understand that. Technology is there for us to take advantage of it. Yes, we will try not to waste what we can't, but understand your HomePod, why it's plugged in and what is it doing right now? She said, it's listening. Yes. It's listening because your dad put smart bulbs in every possible place in this home that I could, so that we could control them with our voice. But we need the HomePod to do that. So she's got to be listening, so she's got to stay plugged in. Otherwise, we're going to be back to going to the light switch, where we use our finger to put it up and down. But what if we fall asleep and we forget to turn on the light switch? Well, we've configured an app that says turn all the lights off in the house at 10 p.m. just in case we forget. There's also a program in the app that says whenever we leave the house, turn off everything. So I'm doing my best to try to save energy by putting these things in place that can automate how we save energy, and we don't ever really waste more than we should. She finally got a chance to understand it. And I said, honey, you do need to apologize for the amount of pride that you had. I didn't know that much was in you. And all I could do was think about my ex for that short time. I said, wow, I remember this is how it used to go. This was my daily life. That stress that I felt with my daughter, that hill that I had to die on because it was right and it was better for the family, that is no way to be in or have a relationship. No way, whether it's with your daughter that you're living with or your spouse. You shouldn't have a relationship that's hard to have. You can have relationships that may be hard at times. They may be difficult from time to time, but they aren't hard to just be in. Remember that. I'm trying to.
Wow. That was the Divorce Diaries podcast. The Daily Saga will continue tomorrow. The full season's episodes are on Patreon now. Subscribe for early access. Click the Patreon link in the description. Hopefully, these entries help our anonymous recorder as a form of his own personal therapy. That's his hope and his intention. Will these recordings of life's curveballs lead this family to the best resolution in the end? We'll keep listening. New episodes are released daily on all podcast players, but all episodes are available on Patreon at Divorce Diaries Podcast Patreon page. Until next time.